All right, what's up, everybody? Bacon Vape here. I wanted to give you guys an update on the Teros12 versus the Acclima TDR. So I started a test before the plants even got planted, before the cubes got wet, and I stuck the sensors into dry cubes. And when I did that, you can see across the tooltip that's hovering here, the TDR VWC is at the top. Zone 1, 2, and 3, sensor 1, 2, and 3. And you see the TDR VWC right here. So when we first planted it, the TDRs were the only ones that were consistently reading 0 on the dry cube. Zone 1 was the cube that remained completely dry. And then I applied a small amount of water, and I was like, all right, let's see what happens. So a little bit of water got applied in zone 2, and you can see here that the TDR was reading 1.4, okay? And then over here in zone 3, that one got fully saturated um, after being stuck in a cubes. Like what I first did is the cubes before they got dunked in water, fully saturated, where you see the huge spike. I just stuck drippers in them, right? And then I also hand watered them. So zone 1 just got drippers, and you can see what happened. Nothing, basically. I only did a few irrigation events. Zone 2 got 1,000 mLs dunked on top of it, and that was the little spike right there. Zone 3 got 2,000 mLs dunked on top of it, and that's why this one was showing around 20%. The Teros12s were reading at 28%, and you can see on each one of these zones there's two Teros12 readings. It's the same sensor, but it's the stock meter group volumetric water content calibration, and then my custom calibration that I did specifically on these Rockwool cubes. Same thing with the SB&V calculation for pore water EC. It's slightly different formula. Trying to just dial that in. It's more of a test on that one than anything, but those are the different values. So then you can see the huge spike, and the annotation here is, the cubes got soaked and the plants got transplanted. From there, all of the Acclima TDRs were reading, if you read across the screen, 82%, 90%, and 87%. So all very high, which if you're familiar with Rockwool, field capacity is typically around 70 to 75%. So that number didn't really jive well with me when I first saturated the cubes. And then I remembered something that another follower had told me, is that the Acclimas don't do well when the cubes are flushed. And anytime that he would flush his cubes, the Acclimas would take several days before they would start registering properly. Which brings me over to this far right zone. We are now several days past the initial watering. This was on 4/8, and we are now over here on 4/12, so it's been 4 days. And finally, this TDR volumetric water content has gone from 87.9% down to a more reasonable number that I would expect around 71%, and matches up with my custom calibration of 71.6%. So to me, that shows that maybe the Acclima could be accurate, but it does take some time to adjust after being heavily saturated. So that is my initial observation about the Acclima TDRs, is that um, when fully saturated or flushed, they are going to be funky and not read appropriately. They obviously are reading way too high still on zone 1 and 2. The Teros12s, even the meter group stock reading, 75% here. On this one over here, 82%. Um, and then my custom calibrations, you can see 67 and 73. So we've had, if you look down here at the range and the minimums and the maximums, you can see what the maximum was, and you can see where we're at now. and that tells you how much dry back we've had since initially planting them. So the TDR over here is showing from 83 to 79, 4% dry back. The zone 2 TDR is showing about a 7 or 8% dry back. And then zone 3 is showing a ridiculous 20% dry back. Now, the Teros12s with the meter group calibration, it started at 77 and we're down to 75. So it's been a 2% drop. My custom calibration was also a 2% drop. And then across the rest of the zones, it was roughly a 2 to 3% drop of dry back on both the stock meter group calibration and my calibration. So we're right on par with the amount of dry back that I would expect after 4 days of planting fresh seedlings into Hugos. If they are planted into smaller cubes, we would expect bigger dry back. Now for the EC, the Acclima TDR seems to be more accurate right now for EC. I did start these cubes off with 2 EC solution, and the TDRs are all reading around 2.5 average. You can see across the screen right now, it's around 2.7, 2.6 on zone 1, 2.2 on zone 2, and 2.2 on zone 3. So both of those are reading, pretty accurate, or all three of those. Now, the Teros12 pour water EC reading for both meter group and my own are pretty equal right now across the board at 3.5 and 3.01, or excuse me, 3.1 almost right here on zone 2, and then 3.36 on zone 3. So my calibration is matching meter groups at this particular water content and EC, but it is about one whole EC higher than what I would expect based on what I fed and the amount of dry back that we've had or haven't, based on how you look at it. So I'll continue to monitor the differences in these two sensors and how they perform over the course of the grow. We're about to start irrigation cycles up tomorrow, which will start giving me more data to analyze, and we'll start getting some bigger dry backs in the coming weeks. So stay tuned, and I'll keep you guys updated.